Hello everyone, I am Fawad Alavi and this is the fifth and the last video of the series of videos that I prepared for you about authentication, authorization, and Asp Net Identity. In this video, we are going to talk about policy-based authorization, how to use requirements, how to use requirement handler, and how to use custom authentication. And at the end of this video, I'm going to explain how I use personally authentication in my projects. If you haven't seen the previous videos, please watch them from the beginning because I explained so many things, and the project that I am working on today is created during the last 4 videos. The link for the project in the GitHub, you can find it inside the description below, and you can download it and use it in your projects. Let's go back to the code and start. The first thing that I need to change is my module controller. Inside the module controller, I'm going to assign a policy to each of the methods. Read policy for get, read write policy for add, full control for update, and full control for delete. And because I'm using the module controller, I need to change the seeding data to use it as well. Let me find it, open it here. I added some claims to the user directly using user manager.addClaim, and now I want to add some claims to the role. As an example here, I'm adding admin claims to the admin role using this admin claim method, get admin claim method that I generated. I will have all the claims serialized and I will place them inside my database. Let's save it and just rebuild the project again. Let's go back to the SQL server. It is the claims list of the claims for user that I have. If I run it, there is no change. But here, when I run it, I will see that for module controller, can you remember the strategy that I told you that we have for the authorization? We will have a claim type based on the controller name, and we will have a list as the value of this claim, which are the permissions that I have. This is what I have for my admin. Let's log out and log in again and check the claims that I have. If I go to the manage claims, it is correct, but it is not what I really like because the types are not sorted and it is not what I really like to have. Let's go back to the project, go to the services and out services. In the get claim, I'm creating another list and call it permission claims. And instead of adding the permission claims, the claim that I read for the user directly to the list of the claims, I'm adding it to the permission claims. Let's comment this line. Let's do exactly the same thing for the claims that we added to different roles. And finally, I am adding all the permission claims that I have to the list of the claims which has username and different roles, and order them by type. If I save it now and run my project, if I refresh it, I will see exactly the same thing. Let's log out and log in again because the claims will placed inside the cookie or inside the token exactly the moment that we log in. Admin and password 123. And now check it. Okay, it is better. Now I can look at them. Modules are first, and the claim types that I have, which are specified types, are on top of the list. I have module and read, write, edit, and delete permission is assigned for module to the admin user. Let's go back and go to the service registration. Inside the service registration, inside the configuration of add authorization, we had some codes. I just commented them. I wrote down the type of each of these authorization on top of them, and for you to use it, I just added that where are they using. As an example, classroom controller, student controller. But if you want to uncomment them, please uncomment them one by one and test them one by one. And here I have policy-based requirement. If I uncomment this one, you will see that on the option we are adding a policy, and a policy has a name. Here we are using full control policy, and for the full control policy we are telling it that this policy requires. Before that we said require claim, like what you see here for claim-based authentication, or require role for role-based authentication. But now we are just telling it we have a requirement and we need to add something to this requirement. And how to do that? Like that, policy.requirements.add, and you need to specify the custom requirement that you have. Here I created admin requirement, contributor requirements, and user requirements. Let's go to the admin requirements. I have the files here inside the authorization folder, and then I have another folder for requirements. For creating a requirement, you need to inherit from authorize requirement. You can specify something here, but this class mostly used as a marker class. A marker class, which means that you don't have anything inside that. You can implement something inside that and we will show it, but in runtime is going to look for this authorization requirement, and because it can find this one, it will find the handler for it. As you can see in this file, I have two classes: admin requirements, which is what I told it what is my requirement here. And the second thing is admin requirement handler, which means that what class is responsible for somehow understanding my requirement and tell me if this requirement criteria is met or not. It should inherit from authorization handler, and we need to pass the requirement class to it as a generic type. As you can see, for admin requirement, I am passing admin requirement to admin requirement handler. The naming convention should be like that, because otherwise after some months you cannot find it, and it is better to place both of them in the same class. If you want to change one of them, you can change the other as well. It has a method. Let me just comment this one. It will start nagging that you need to implement a method. The method is handle requirement async, which accepts authorization handler context, and it is called context, and it is passing an object of admin requirement. Here we are passing admin requirement to it as a generic type, and here it is going to pass us the requirement as well. Okay, let me uncomment everything. From the context, I have access to user. I can get list of the claims, and we can get the user permission. How can I get the user permission? Easy. If I just search the list of the claims that I have, find exactly the claim type that we want, which is in this case module, I will have the array. And if I deserialize the array and return a list of that, it will do the magic for me. Let's see it here using Thunder client. If I go to login and send a request for having admin user, copy the token and go to jwt.io, as you can see, if we find the claim which has module as its type and then get this value, which can be an array, but in our case it is not an array anymore. It means that we have 4 different claims with name module, and for each of them, for first it is 1 the value for the second is 2, for the third is 3, and for the fourth is 4. I just created one helper method to do this for me. If I go to method, you will see that I am checking if claims, if they have any claim with this type, If they don't have, I'm returning null. And if they have, I'm just selecting from the claims, all the claims with this specific name that in our case is majul. And after that, select a value and convert it to int. This method, this to method, is an extension method that I usually use in all of my projects. This extension method allows me just press dot to specify the type, and it is going to convert it to int for me. And as a result, it returns the IEnumerable t. Let me go to the definition of this to method and show it to you. It is public static t to and passing it a type. I created this extension method over object, which is the parent for almost all the reference types. And we are checking if it is null, we are returning default. And otherwise, if it is not null, we are converting and changing type from type of input to the type of we are passing to it and return it. In all of my projects, I'm using it a lot. Great. And when we have user permissions, we are checking if user permission is not null and user permission contains read, write, update, and delete. It means that my user has full control over this controller, which is module in my case. If the request meets the conditions in this requirement handler, I need to say context.success and pass the requirement to that one, which is admin requirement. Otherwise, I just can say context.fail. As you can see, we cannot return anything except task.complete task. We cannot return 0. We cannot return anything except task.complete task. Let's go back to the service registration. We have contributor requirement, which is exactly the same for contributor requirement. We have a contributor requirement, which is extending authorization requirement. We have one requirement handler for it. And here we are checking if the user has read and write permission. We are going to let the request to have access to the contents. And exactly the same thing for users as well. Just do not forget, you need to register these types to your dependency injection system. It means that for the type authorization handler, we need to register admin requirement handler. It is a bit confusing here. We are telling that the requirement is admin requirement, but for the handler, when we are registering it, we need to register admin requirement handler, contributor requirement handler, and user requirement handler. Let's use Thunder Client to test our requests. The user that we have here is admin. Let's save it to be sure and just run it. Let's check for modules. Yes. And contributor user, let's save it and run it again. If I run it, I expect that delete and updates cannot be accessed by the contributor user, which is correct. They are returning forbidden. And if we add it to user, save it and go back to my test and run it again, I will see that user just can't get the request. But there is a thing here. Can I just create something like a generic requirement handler? Because I have some requirements here and I need to register a requirement handler for all of them. Yes, it is possible. If I go to the requirement folder that I have a generic requirement handler. This generic requirement handler is from the type authorization handler. If I go to admin requirement handler, you will see that it is from type authorization handler, but this one is from the type authorization handler. And it has handle async. In the handle async, we are passing authorization handler context, but we are not passing the requirement type anymore. First thing that we need to do here, we need to get the list of the requirements that we have registered inside our pipeline. By this line, context.pending requirements, we are getting the list of all requirements registered in our pipeline. Here in generic requirement handler, we can get all pending requirements and we can get all the classes. We have the claims, we have the user permissions. Now it is time to check for all the requirements that we have and check them one by one. If the requirement is from type admin requirement, I want to check if it has read, write, update, and delete. If it has, I am going to pass this requirement using context.success requirement. And exactly the same for contributor requirement and for user requirement. I just need to... We don't need these dependencies anymore, but we need to register another dependency for authorization handler, and this generic requirement handler should be registered here. If I just run my application and go to the Thunder client, check what is my user, it is user, and run everything as I expected, the module is just running, and just get method has the permission to return the response type 200 for contributor. If I run it again, it is exactly the same. I want to debug this one. Let's go to the Thunder client again and send this request. If I send this request, my generic requirement handler get hit. The list of the requirements here is just one. And what is the requirement? Requirement is something from type contributor requirement. And this requirement, it is going to check it. And after that, it is going to read it. It is going to check if read and write permission contains in the list of the permissions that we have for user or not, like a piece of cake. Let's check it. What else do we have here? Yeah, I guess it is all about the generic requirement. I can remember that previously, many years ago in .NET Framework, when we wanted to write authorization policies or authorization mechanism to authorize something, we tried to do it as generic as possible. As an example, let me just comment out everything. In old good days, when we wanted to just write authorization and overwrite the default behavior of the authorization, we try to design a system that we don't pass so many things and write a lot of code. We try to just do the authorization based on the convention. As an example here, what we designed here is we have a controller. If we have a claim type exactly the same as the controller, and if we have the permission level exactly for the method that we have get, update, add, and delete. If we have exactly the same permission, we let them do it. But how did we do it in .NET Framework? It is something that we did it many years ago. It is not the way that Microsoft suggests to follow these days. I'm just telling it to you because after that I'm going to implement the same idea using the way that Microsoft suggests us to follow. Let's go to the teachers controller. As you can see, we have no attribute. I have a custom attribute here. In this custom attribute, I just inherit from attribute an async authorization filter. For the async authorization filter, I need to implement unauthorization async, and it is passing me the authorization filter context. This context has context, and after that I can get routes data, and from the routes data I can get the value of the controller and the value of the action. Then I have access to the controller name and to the action name. The controller name is the type of my claim, and action name somehow can be mapped to the permission that I can assign to the user. And here I have authorize helper get action permission. Let's see how I did that. And we are getting the action name. We are telling it if it is get, it means that this method requires read permission. If it is add, this method requires write permission. If it is update, this method requires update permission. And if it is delete, this method requires delete permission. And if it is something else, it doesn't need permission, or we don't specify any specific permission for this one. Of course, in normal projects, it is not just 4 actions. We have so many more actions, but let's stick to this one for the sake of the demo. And here we have the required permission that if the user has these required permissions, it should have access, or the user should have access to this action method. We have the claims. We can get the user permissions using the other helper method that I showed you, which looks inside the claim and extract the claim specifically for this controller. I have the controller name, and we will check if user permission is not null. If I check it here, if there is no claim with the specified type, it is going to return to null. Then we check if the user should have access to this controller or not. And we are checking if the required permission is not null, because I'm not going to let anyone to access to a method which I don't specify permission for it. And I'm checking if user permission contains the required permission that I want for this action or not. If it is true, it means user or request has access to get the value of this action method, and we are returning. Otherwise, we are changing the context, changing the result of the context, and return unauthorized object result with this string. Let's try it. For trying that, we need to use this attribute, which is custom authorize. The only thing that I need to do is just adding this custom authorize to this class. And as I told you, when you apply one attribute to a class, all the methods inside that all the action methods inside that will have the same attribute behind the scene. It really depends on the way that we design that, but for authorization related things, it is 100% correct. And as I explained in the previous session, if you need or want to know more about how these things get handled inside ASP.NET pipeline and inside the request lifecycle, just let me know, and I will create a video about that one as well. It is time to run it. Let me rebuild the application, go to Thunder client, and inside the Thunder client, I want to check my access to the teacher controller. First, let's check what is my user. Let's try with admin and save everything and send a request. For teacher controller, I don't have access. Let me think, it should pass. What don't I have? Oh, got it. Inside the database, for teacher, we don't have any kind of permissions. As you can see, claim type are module. And here for the user, the claim types are a student. Let's change the seed method that we have. Let me go to the service registration and seed method. And here for the role, yeah, let's have it for the role. And change it to not for module, for teacher. Yeah, change it to teacher here as well, and here, and save everything and just rebuild my project. Now if I just run it in Thunder client, just log in, and check the token, I will see that the teacher adds here. Fine. Now let's run it. Yeah, bingo. Teacher is passing. Let's change it to contributor, save it, and run it again. It is exactly as I wanted for teacher. These two should fail. And if I use user and save it and run it again, you will see that just get method can be reached. Fine. It is really easy performance-wise and implementation-wise, because I don't need to annotate all the methods that I have here with authorize attribute and specify the name of the policy that I have. Can we combine this method, this functionality that I have about the convention of the name of controllers and action methods with the concept that we learned about the generic requirement handling? For sure we can do that. I have a convention-based requirement. As you can see, this convention-based requirement, it has a convention-based requirement from authorization requirement. And we have convention-based requirement handler. It is an authorization handler. What I need to add here is just to add a constructor method. And after that, the dependency injection will do the magic for us, because I will ask for one IHTTP context accessor. And using this IHTTP context accessor, I will have access to my HTTP context. And using that one, I can say underscore HTTP context accessor dot get HTTP client dot get route and get the controller name, get the action name, and the rest of the things are exactly like the attribute that I had. Let me see it. Let me see how can I use it. Let's go back to the controller, to the teacher controller, and comment this custom authorization. I want to add a policy to this class, to this API class, and it will get applied to all the action methods that it has, and call it generic policy. And for this generic policy, I need to register it inside the service registration. Let me go to the service registration, in the authorization. Let me copy it and paste it here. We are going to add a policy, and the policy name is generic policy. And we need to add a requirement. What is the requirement that I have? It is convention-based requirement. And the last thing that we need to do is just to add this convention required base handler to my dependency injection. You might ask why I created this convention-based requirement when I could use, not here, when I could use a generic way of doing that. Because if I wanted to create it using the generic requirement handler, I should have iterate over all the requirements that I had, and it just made the code a bit messier. But I taught you everything that you need to know about authorization, authentication, and how to customize it. There are some small other things that I didn't cover, like authorization provider. It is not too advanced, but it is not something that you use every day. But if you need it, just let me know. If you write inside the comments that you need it, I'm going to create a video about that one as well. But I'm pretty sure the last two things that I told you about the how to customizing the authorize attribute and how to use requirements to handle the authorization based on the convention can do the magic for you in almost all your projects. It was all I prepared for you, and it was all I wanted to cover about authorization, authentication, and ASP.NET Identity. Thanks a lot for watching all the 5 videos, and if you like them, please hit the like button and do not forget to subscribe to my channel. And by hitting the bell, you will be notified when I upload a new video. If you found this video interesting and useful, please share it with your colleagues and fellow developers that you know. If you have any question about this content or about C# or development related things, just let me know inside the comments. I will try to answer them as soon as possible, or maybe if it is a good topic, I'm going to create a video about that one. Keep coding and keep enjoying your life as a developer.